Naked. Lately, I'd become obsessed with sewing stuffed animals. I'd seen a bear in a store and thought it was cute. So I went to a hobby shop and saw they were selling kits that included yarns, needles, and other little things you'd need to make any sort of animal. It seemed to be a thing. I bought a kit and went home and made a frog that very evening. I went back the next day and bought more kits: a dog, an elephant, a cat, every kind they had. I made one every night until I'd made them all. The next time I went back, I just bought the yarn and felt and some buttons to use for cat eyes. I'd figured out a trick to do it after about the fourth kit, so I wanted to start trying out my own designs. But apparently, I'd lost any ounce of creativity I'd ever possessed, and the hippopotamus I made turned out not the slightest bit cute. So I went to a bookstore, bought a Pokemon handbook, and then made one Pokemon monster after another, starting with Pikachu. I was so into it that I forgot to sleep, forgot to eat, and out came monster after monster: Jigglypuff, Togepi, Psyduck, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Eevee, but soon enough I got bored with them too. So, thinking I'd try my hand at making a stuffed version of my post pet, Momo, I turned on my computer for the first time in a while and saw that there were over 20 emails waiting in my inbox. I had been once obsessed with post pets too. These little animal characters who deliver your email. Most of the messages were from e-friends I'd made on the post pet site. I didn't know their real names or faces. Animals would appear: bears, turtles, hamsters, only to disappear, leaving letters behind in my inbox. The messages themselves were never anything of any importance, but the point of it was to make my little pet deliver and receive messages. So while I was never particularly gratified, I was never particularly disappointed either. But today, waiting there in my inbox was a bear named Momotaro from Asuka's house. The content of the message was an invitation. I'll be in Shinjuku next Saturday shopping for the Bond Festival. Do you want to grab lunch? Counting from the date on that email, next Saturday would be tomorrow. Maybe I should call, I thought, but then remembered how busy she was and decided to email a reply instead. Whenever and wherever is fine by me. The call from Asuka came before 2 hours had passed. It's been so long. How are you doing? I never got a reply, so I figured you were busy and decided not to bother you. She seemed still unused to the idea that I had nothing but free time on my hands these days. I wasn't busy. How could I be? I don't do anything. I'd meant to say it lightly, but Asuka grew silent on the other end of the line, seemingly at a loss. Worried that I had said something wrong, I hurried to explain myself. The thing is, last week I got wrapped up in doing something and it started to interfere with my sleep, so I fell behind checking my email. It wasn't a job or anything, but still. What was it? I'm sewing stuffed animals. Some of them have turned out really well. I'd love to show them to you. There was no answer. It seemed I'd left her at loss once again. I pretended not to notice and chattered on. What time should we meet tomorrow? I'll fit myself into your schedule. A housewifely sigh escaped Asuka. I don't know whether to be happy or sad hearing that from you, of all people. We decided on a time and place to meet and hung up. I found that I was neither particularly happy nor particularly sad. I just felt vacant, a white blank. Soon it would be 2 years since I'd become unemployed. At first, the descriptor unemployed, age 34, had sounded almost like a criminal charge, but I got used to it soon enough. Indeed, my ability to adjust so easily appalled me. Now I inhabited the identity. Since revised to unemployed, age 36, body and soul. It was 2 years ago that my husband told me that he was divorcing me, which, since we had run his company together, meant I ended up losing my job too. Naturally, I reacted badly at first to this sequence of events, but the period of angry protests and carrying Jags was really quite short, and I acquiesced to receiving my settlement and moving my name from the family register with an ease that surprised even myself. What was this lack of attachment? It was as much a mystery to me as to anyone. So, this life of mine, this life of uncertainty, of not knowing if I even want to do something with myself, simply continued, never dipping all the way into depression or desperation. Looking out the window from where I lay in the bed, I could see the tall buildings outside shrouded by falling rain. It was July, but the long rains persisted. About half a year ago, I was obsessed with making elaborate outfits for teddy bears, and I ended up giving all of them to Asuka for her kids. It occurred to me that I could do the same with these animals I was making, but the moment it did, I felt myself losing my will to create anymore. I'd always had a personality that ran hot and cold. But now that my life had become one of the infinite leisure, it was much worse. Giving yourself over to an old, irresponsible urge feels good though. It was even possible that against all odds, I was happy. The next day, I ate lunch with Asuka in a restaurant located among the rows of tall buildings I could see from my window. This is for your little girl, I said, handing her a paper bag stuffed with a monster I had made, and she didn't seem as grateful as when I'd given her the teddy bear outfits. Oh, it's Pikachu from Pokemon. Oh, wow. Asuka seemed to be working hard to manufacture her enthusiasm. Does it look all right? It looks great, just great. Now I think about it, you've been so good at stuff like this, Izumi, arts and crafts and home, etc. Are you sure it's all right for me to take it home? Oh, I just made it because I wanted to make it, to kill time. Thank you, said Asuka. And she indeed took it, but it was clear something was bothering her. I hadn't sewn the thing with anyone in particular in mind, and had even been thinking of getting rid of it on the next garbage day myself. So if she covertly threw it out, it made no difference to me. Asuka was a childhood friend since elementary school, the one I still had. A working mother of two, she had switched from part time to full now that her youngest had started school. Busy with work and childcare, she still found room in her schedule to meet me from time to time. Before, I was the one who'd find trouble finding time to meet up, so it was quite the reversal now that she was no longer the one trying to accommodate another schedule. You look thin, Izumi. This was hospital patient treatment. It was painfully clear how careful she was being, and I started to feel bad. Really? I don't rate myself, so I don't know. Your color's not good. I'm not wearing any makeup. That's all. Sitting there in a restaurant filled with tables draped in pure white cloth and decked out in cutlery of real silver, I knew how bedraggled I must have looked. Asuka wasn't dressed up, wearing just the summer weight sweater set, but her hair was neatly done and her makeup exquisite. A pearl necklace shone from her collar opened. By contrast, I was wearing a faded ringer tee, a pair of cargo pants that were all stretched out around the waist. I no longer bought clothes, so I couldn't just throw into the washing machine. Asuka should have been the one exhausted from the pressures of every day, but there I was, not even bothering to hide the dark circles under my eyes that clearly marked me as the one whose life was wearing her down. Are you still collecting unemployment? Oh no, that ended a while ago. Well, maybe it's time to look for something, if only to clear your head. I could tell she was trying very hard, choosing her words carefully, and I laughed a bit little louder. I will. Thanks for worrying about me. I have enough to get by for a little longer. It's okay. Money's an issue, of course, but it's not the only one. Muttering this to herself irritatedly, she brought her water glass to her lips. I knew what I could say to soothe her, but I decided to say something else. I've gotten tired of making the animals. I think I'll try my hand at sewing you caught up this summer. I see. You might as well carve erasers into little shapes. She just said it, exasperated, and I dropped my eyes to my plate. When you say something cruel, it only makes sense you'll get something cruel in response. As we brought forkfuls of our respective fish dishes to our mouths in the suddenly tense atmosphere, Asuka got a look like she had just thought of something. Why don't you make a website to sell them? If you've made all these nice things already. They're hardly nice things, just silly knockoffs. This time she didn't even try to hide her sigh. Perhaps deciding that no matter what note she struck, nothing would resonate, a motherly sprite smile spread across her face as she said gently, "It's not easy getting back on your feet, is it? I'm sorry. I won't say anything more about it." Before I'd been the one to play the older sister, listening to Asuka's worry about her job and family, but at some point I'd become the unstable younger sister who needed to be handled with kid gloves. But if I never back to being the suit wearing go getter, so busy I'd cancel 2, 3 times for lunch date we scheduled, would she ever see me as truly back on my feet? It was depressing to imagine being compared with my previous self and subjected to disappointed sighs every time we got together. I told her not to, but Asuka insisted on paying for lunch. Being unemployed means being treated to every meal you're invited to. It wounded my pride at first, but it was such a bother to put up a fuss that lately I just went with it. Asuka was hardly wealthy. She worked full time because there was no way that make their mortgage payments and pay for their kids' education on her husband's salary alone. Yet she still went for shopping for other people's bond celebrations and treated her unemployed friend to fancy French lunches, even though that friend was jobless by choice, even though the friend had 20 million yen in the bank. What would she have said if I had told her that? Well, she was surely pure of heart enough to leave it at, "You'll need that for your retirement, don't waste it now." We parted promising to email each other, and then my desire to make things with my hands having cooled, I found myself with nothing particular to do to pass the rest of my day and ended up going to a manga cafe. There was one in particular I liked on the second floor of one of those buildings filled with all sorts of little businesses. It seemed like the businesses in those buildings changed all the time here in the heart of the city. What was once a lingerie bar became a massage parlor 15 minutes later, but lately it seemed like every block had at least one manga cafe. For a while, I went around trying each new one as they sprang up here and there and everywhere. But in the end, it turned out to be this place, one of the first I tried, that had the deepest manga collection and the most courteous staff. Their all-you-can-drink coffee wasn't simmered to sludge, and since their prices were a little on the high side, the clientele tended a bit older than at the other places. But what really decided it for me was a clean white sofa placed in a lovely, harmonious spot in the main room. Not being a smoker, I could ensconce myself there with no trouble in the comparatively underpopulated non smoking section. Today, I found a complete set of Osamu Tezuka's Buddha. which had always had its first few volumes already claimed by someone else wherever I'd looked for it before. And I checked out the whole thing, brought it to my table, and started reading. Soon, I was so engrossed I even forgot to drink my coffee. After about the third volume, though, the thread of my concentration snapped, and I glanced out of the window to find that it was already getting dark. I'd left home without my watch, so I didn't know what time it was. I went to the bathroom, refreshed my coffee, and as I passed by the counter to look at the clock in the wall behind, I saw that it was already 7 in the evening. The napping salarymen around me had been replaced by a growing number of what appeared to be students. Should I go home or should I see Buddha to the end? I mused as I sipped my coffee. I'd eaten a proper lunch for once, so I wasn't hungry, and it wasn't like I had any plans for tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. So, what did it matter? Without a way to prioritize your activities, it's almost impossible to decide on something to do. My eyes wandered over the shelves near me. I noticed the Maisen Ikoku was there, its volume lined up in a neat little row, and I remembered that I'd started once, back when I was a student myself, but never found out how it ended. I'll read that next, I decided. Suddenly filled with the desire to hurry up and finish Buddha, I stood up. When all was said and done, I ended up staying there late into the night, finishing the whole set, and then walking the 20-minute distance back home. I found myself surrounded by drunks all the way there, and I ended up night drifting off to sleep, thinking my usual self-pitying thoughts. It occurred to me that I'd never really known the true meaning of having free time, what sort of state it really was, or what it really felt like until now. It was different from being bored. I'd been bored countless times before, in high schools, sitting in the class staring at the face of the teacher exponentially worse than the one in my cram school, in college, unwillingly brought along to a singles mixture. While working at the import-export company, trapped in a meeting that kept dragging on, I'd stifle my yawns and bear the boredom as I pretended to listen, making another more meaningful plans in my head. The meaningless and the meaningful. For a long time, I thought these were the only two kinds of time that were in the world. It never occurred to me there might be others. In high school, all I ever had time to do was worry about entrance exams, but once I got into college, things loosened up a bit and I began to have a little fun. Still, I never forgot to focus on the tests and papers I had to write. Fellow students who would come to me asking to borrow my notes, and even though I knew they mattered behind my back about how much of a grind I was, I'd let them copy them with a smile. To see those who'd mocked me suddenly humble themselves to win my favor became my secret joy. I had to apply to work at a mid-sized import-export company rather than a major one because I figured it would be the quickest way to become self-sufficient. And I was right. Before long, I was given more and more responsibilities. If the plan I made succeeded, it was obvious, taking the form of maximized profits, and the pleasure this brought soon absorbed me completely. I'd get an idea, and it felt like no hardship at all to do whatever it took to realize it. However much research, however much smoozing, however much sleepless nights. And none of this changed when I met my husband and quit my job to begin working with him. I loved working and hated being lazy. It was such a simple mode of being, it occurred to me now. I never wavered, not even once. Just before my divorce, my husband complained about my empty, money-hungry way of life. And at the time, I simply had no idea what he was talking about. So all the way from childhood to my mid-30s, this was the kind of life sustained me. And even now, I didn't see the satisfaction I felt as some kind of delusion, but it also never occurred to me that what I'd always taken to be solid ground beneath my feet could turn out to be so thin and fragile, a layer of ice. When it broke, I thought I'd sink to the frozen death, but instead, I found myself floating in this lukewarm water called free time. Lulling about in it was so much easier than I'd imagined. And at this point, I'd lost sight of any motivation strong enough to make me drag myself out. I opened my eyes, once more unsure of how many hours I'd slept on. It was hard to keep track of what day it was, and I didn't get a newspaper, and my television had been broken since last month. I turned on the radio, a day program was playing. It was an AM station I never listened to. I was struck anew by the mysterious pleasure that came every day with hearing the same voice at the same time, every day. I grabbed the watch I'd left next to my pillow and checked the date and the day of the week. It was a name brand chronograph my husband had bought me one Christmas. My name was engraved to its back, so even if I wanted to sell it, I couldn't. Besides, it was a convenient enough thing to have around, so there I was, still using it. My dilapidated one-bedroom in West Shinjuku was drenched in the humidity of rainy season, and I could see where the mold had begun to grow on the peeling wallpaper in the corner. But 20 years ago, the concrete walls had cracks visible from the outside, and the kitchen furnishings and the window sash were shabby and cheap. But it wasn't a rental. It was mine, bought with my own money. My life here was so much more relaxed than the one I'd live in, the top floor waterfront apartment I'd shared with my husband. When I left the apartment after the divorce, I found this place advertised in a newspaper insert. I could afford to buy it outright with my settlement, so I did. And I didn't regret it, but sometimes I did look back at myself then and wonder what I'd been so scared of. Was it I couldn't be sure that I'd be able to keep up with the rent and loan payments, so I needed to secure a roof over my head, no matter how rinky-dink? Surely I could have found something better for the same price in the suburbs, but living downtown hadn't even occurred to me. Living in a suburban apartment building surrounded left and right and up and down by happy, respectable families would surely have driven me crazy anyway. If I'd wanted a place where an unemployed single woman in her late 30s would be inconspicuous, my impulsive choice turned out to be a pretty good one. Half of this broken down building was office space, and the other half was presumably places where people lived. It was hard to say for sure. From time to time, I would run into someone else wearing a t-shirt and jeans and waiting, like me, for the elevator, a plastic convenience store bag hanging from their grip. Whoever they were, I'd never know, since we studiously avoided exchanging pleasantries or even glances, like two couples running into each other at a love hotel. We scurried to escape each other's sight as fast as we could. A little rain was falling outside today as well. It was muddy, and thinking I should maybe turn on the air conditioning, I rose from my bed. I fished for the remote amid the drafts of dust bunnies and candy wrappers and manga weeklies, but as I went to activate the dehumidify mode, the numbers on the LCD screen faded before my eyes. Thinking the batteries must have run down, I took out ones from my alarm clock and replaced the ones in the remote. But still, nothing happened on the little screen. I let the things fall off from my hand back onto the floor. I pulled a chair over and stood on it so I could see that there was something in the air conditioner itself to put the batteries, but I couldn't figure it out. The television still wasn't working, and the light was out in the kitchen. I imagined all the things in the apartment breaking down like this, one after the other, until I was the only thing left and ended up breaking down too. It felt like someone else's problem, not mine. I also lacked the will to call a repairman. It all just seemed like too much bother. I should have been so happy to have all this time to myself at last. And yet, all I seemed to do was waste it. Ever since I'd left school, every day had been so busy and I'd had a mountain of things I wanted to do. If only I could get a moment to myself. The business I'd run with my husband sold traditional handicrafts and things of that sort, and I longed to tour various places they were made. The main store was near Asakusa, so we had a lot of foreign tourists come in, and I'd want to get in touch with a tea master or flower arrangement teacher to set up a little curriculum to give these tourists a taste of traditional Japanese arts. I'd always found myself refusing my friends' invitations to do things together, and I dreamed of going out to dinner or off to a hot spring with someone to whom I had no obligations. I wanted to go to gym more than once a month, and I wanted to go to the spa for a facial. I wanted to travel overseas more often. I just wanted to go shopping. If only I had time to do it all. But of course, as soon as I had time, these things all lost their meaning. As soon as I was no longer in the position to give input to my husband's business or influence it in any way, the calls from everyone who had been competing for my time and attention stopped. As if it hadn't been me, the individual they'd wanted so badly to see, but rather me, the successful co-owner of a handicrafts store. It turned out I'd only felt the need to work out because my husband liked going to the gym, and I no longer desired designer clothes either, or the treatments meant to preserve some small portion of my youth. It turned out that the real me didn't really like going out at all, and preferred instead to stay at home sewing or whatever. Or maybe it was just that having all this free time thrust upon me had left me in a state of confusion. Since my teens, I'd always been striving to get ahead, to climb higher and higher, and this desire was real. I'd wanted to win, just win, no matter what. But win at what? Was it all me who'd hated losing so much just exhausted now, asleep somewhere within me? Or had I been pushing myself too hard from the start and this me was my true self? Though even contemplating these questions seemed like too much trouble these days. I ate a burger at the nearby fast food joint and headed back to the manga cafe. It wasn't like that I liked manga so very much, really. It was just after losing my job and my ambitions, I lost my capacity to read regular books as well. I'd go to the libraries, of course, but it takes effort to follow printed words and understand them, to transform them into pictures in your head. Truthfully, TV was the easiest thing. But ever since my set broke, it had been manga all the way for me. Though I found that even as reading them completely engrossed me, once I was done, I was left with nothing. No memories or feelings or anything. Reading manga was just another way to kill time. No more, no less. I poured myself a cup of coffee, piled the entire run of Maisen Ikoku on the table, and began reading it volume after volume. During the reading process, I took one nap, went to the bathroom twice, refilled my coffee 3 times. I lost all sense of time as I read, and when I finished, I looked up at the clock, expecting it to be around 10 at night only, to find it was already past 3 in the morning. Looking around the cafe, I saw it had filled up with drunks who'd missed the last train home. I debated whether to walk back to my place. It had been unpleasant the night before. I'd had to make my way through the crowds of drunks to get home, so perhaps it would be better to wait till morning here. It was only 2 more hours till the first trains would begin to clear the neighborhood of stranded partiers again anyway. I left my seat on the sofa to get a collection of light gag comic to read, and when I returned, I found that the seat next to me had been taken by a young, red-faced, cataclysmically inebriated salaryman. I stood looking down at his sleep-slackened features. Something about them seemed familiar. From time to time his brow would furrow, and he'd moan softly as if having a bad dream. Who is he? As I stood there, asking myself as if I remembered him from my working days. His eyes popped open. The moment they met mine, he reflexively and loudly blurted an apology. I'm sorry. The other customers in the store looked at over us, at least the ones who were still awake. Seeing his face so flustered startled me into a reflex of my own. It came back at me all at once who he was. Hey, wait, are you Izumi? He asked. I sat down beside him without answering. What are you doing in a place like this? Shouldn't I be asking you that? What kind of a person starts apologizing as soon as he sees your face? I responded, vaguely irritated. He was a guy who'd worked under me briefly at a company where I'd first worked. He was about 5 years younger than me, if I recall correctly. He was pretty incompetent, and I remembered having to get after him a lot. I remembered his face, but I couldn't remember his name. Well, it gave me quite a shock. I was having a dream where I was being yelled at by my supervisor, and I opened my eyes, and there's Izumi looking at me. Sorry about that. But still, what brings you to a place like this? Phew, I'm still a bit shocked. What are you doing here? I was at a loss for an answer. There wasn't any stock explanation to give for ending up whiling away an entire night at a manga cafe, and I didn't really want to get into the real reasons with some guy I barely knew. How many years has it been? Meeting you here like this, it seems like destiny or something, you know? Are you waiting for the first train out too, Izumi? Almost everyone who comes to a manga cafe does so alone, and as a result, they're usually quieter than libraries. This guy's drink amplified voice was bouncing off the walls. Destiny, did he say? More like a curse. Embarrassed, I rose from my seat. Hey, are you leaving already? Be quiet. He ended up following me as I went to the register to settle my tab. Well then, I'll go too. You'll sit here and wait for the first train. It's dangerous for a woman alone out there in Kabukicho at this hour. Here, I'll get you a taxi. I turned my back on him as he said this, hurriedly pushing open the door to leave. I'd meant to escape this nuisance by cutting him off and vanishing, but he hounded my heels as I descended the staircase to the street. And I ended up tumbling down into the sideway walk. I was dizzy. Something was wrong. Are you okay? Even the great Izumi can fall, it seems. Rushing up behind me, he reached out to help me back on my feet, and I found myself looking up to his face. It was useful, a little puppyish. I grabbed his hand, flushed with embarrassment, and he let me pull me up. I felt queer feeling in my breast as I did, a little nostalgic, a little painful. I'm hungry. Should we go for ramen? I realized two things as he asked me for this. One was that nostalgic pain I'd felt had been my pride, which seemed able to be wounded again after so long. The other was the reason I'd fallen on the stairs was that I was famished. The guy's name was Kenta Obara. Oh, that's right, I thought as I looked down in the business card he'd put on the side beside me at the ramen place. There had been a guy at his cohort company named Kenichi Obara, so everyone called Kenichi Big Ken, while Kenta, who was shorter and slighter, became Little Ken. The card indicated that he worked not at the company we'd known each other, but rather at some subdivision of an appliance manufacturer in customer service. You quit the old company? I asked this as I sucked noodles into my mouth, since I didn't really have anything else to talk about with him. Yeah, I left pretty soon after you did, Izumi. The supervisor after you was like 100 times stricter than you ever were, and I got so stressed out. I found a bald patch on my head the size of a 500 yen coin. I thought if I didn't leave, I'd die. So I left. You'd die just from a strict supervisor? I thought, keeping my silence. And as if sensing my thoughts, little Ken pointed at me, his disposable chopsticks. Ah, you're thinking, God, what it was, aren't you? I am. I didn't feel any need to observe common courtesy with him at this point, so I answered truthfully. It's all right. I am. I admitted. I'm a loser, a whipped dog with his tail between his legs, he said with a surprising amount of joie de vivre. And what about you, Izumi? What happened to you? Oh, right, you got married, didn't you? So it's not Izumi anymore. And I forgot your new name. I apologize. What was it again? Anyway, I remember your first name still. Ryoko. Ryoko Izumi. I always thought that was a pretty name from the first time I heard it. Little Ken kept talking instead of eating, and the amount of ramen in his bowl wasn't going down. I had already finished mine, and I wiped my mouth with a tissue from my pocket. Hey, could I borrow one of those? I passed him a sheet, and he noisily blew his nose into it before stuffing it into the pocket of his suit and going back to his ramen. I rested my cheek on my hand and watched him. His suit was cheap, his tie loose, but his nails were impeccable. Taking a peek under the counter, I saw his bag was beat up and old-looking, while his shoes were immaculately polished. His taste was so bad, but his detailing was good, it seemed. So, what kind of work do you do now? I ignored whatever he was saying to me and asked this instead. Customer service. Well, I spend most of my time listening to people complain, really, and dispatching the guys to go out and fix things. Sometimes I have to go do the fixing myself. I get called up, yelled at, end up fixing the thing, bow my head, apologize, just that day, in and day out. Really? I guess you must have a talent for it. It's no talent, though my degree is in engineering. He gave me another look that seemed a little dispirited than his words, and then poured the rest of the broth in his bowl down his throat. He looked back at me and seemed bashful for the first time that night. It appeared that his drunkenness had cleared up a bit now, and he had some food in him, and he was confused as to what to do at this point, having gotten himself into the situation. Is it okay if I ask you something? A bit sleepy myself after having eaten, I stifled a yawn as I nodded. Where exactly do you live? What are you doing in a place like this, at a time like this, eating ramen with the likes of me? Isn't your husband going to be upset? I live in West Shinjuku, only about 20-minute walk away. I'm eating ramen with you because you invited me, Obara, and I've been divorced since the year before last, so my husband no longer gets upset no matter what I do, or when I do it, or where. I carefully removed any infection from my voice as I answered, attempting to play it off as casually as possible. Still, little Ken stifled a bit as he listened. It might have been kinder of me to have provided a little more of an explanation, but on the other hand, I was sleepy and really couldn't be bothered. It's about time for the trains to get back up. You have to go to work today, right? You should go home. I tried to say this as sweetly as I could, but little Ken was still blinking blankly at me. Finally, he returned to himself a little and said, Izumi, what do you do now? Nothing, and I'm unemployed. No, how could you? The great Izumi. I felt a slight twinge as my self-respect took another blow. We thanked the guy behind the counter and rose to our feet, and as we did, little Ken fumbled for his wallet. I told him it was okay, but to no avail. I ended up treated to yet another meal. I felt the word loser, which little Ken had used to describe himself, grow larger and larger in my thoughts. He was asleep next to me on my plain Jane pipe bed, curled against my side, hugging me. I'd opened my eyes to find myself in this position, clutched tightly as if by a child, and unable to get up without disturbing him. I resigned myself to lying back and staring at the ceiling. After the ramen, I'd left home, but little Ken insisted on accompanying me. I really don't want to go to work, he said with a tone of resignation, and when I offered, well, it won't hurt to miss just one day, he eagerly nodded, unhappy again. You know I had a crush on you even back then, Izumi. You should know that. Let it cheer you up, he said in a childish rush of flattery, and then he grabbed my hand. I'd never had one iota of romantic feeling for him as far as I recalled, yet as he put my hand in his, I found it didn't particularly bother me, so I invited him up to my apartment. As soon as we arrived, little Ken began throwing off his clothes, and I thought vaguely to myself, oh, right, I guess this means we're doing it. We ended up going at it 3 times before we were through. It had been truly a while since I had last been touched. I shouldn't remember when my husband and I had sex for the last time, and not even counting sex, I struggle to recall how many years it has been since I was last kissed, or had my hand held, or my back stroked, or shoulder rubbed by someone, anyone, man or woman. So the simple truth was, it felt good. Also, as a side note, it gratified me to learn that I still had a sex drive at all. Little Ken nuzzled me across my collarbone, murmuring soft nonsense into the hollow. Stroking his head as if to hold it against my body was enough to quiet him. He was really like a dog. What time is it? I thought, and I reached the hand that wasn't occupied with little Ken to feel for my watch next to my pillow and turned its face towards me. It was just past 10 in the morning. Hardly slept at all. Well, it's not like I have anything pressing to do, I thought, and closed my eyes and went back to sleep. Little Ken's head was heavy on my shoulder. I'd like to keep to sleep nested in my husband's arms, but I hadn't realized how heavy a head could be. He was such a nice guy, I thought, remembering my ex-husband. The only son of a landlord in Shitamachi, he had a certain absent-minded way about him, but was a quality person. He was optimistic to the core, considerate and patient. Unlike me, he hadn't held grudges and never had a bad word to say about anyone. I'd loved these things about him at first, but after a while they began to wear on me. Had his being so easygoing led me into becoming inconsiderate? I'd ended up assuming that the things that made me happy made him happy too. Loser. The word danced back and forth before my closed eyes. Little Ken's hair felt good against me. He didn't use any product in it, but it felt like he just washed it in the morning. I burrowed my nose into it and breathed deeply. The scent of another was so refreshing. Little Ken and I are perfect together. A perfect pair of losers, I thought, without a hint of malice or contempt. All it took was a bit of contact between my naked body and his to get me liking some guy I'd never given a second thought to before, it seemed. Never underestimate the power of sheer skin on skin. I struck myself as a bit funny in the moment, as well as a bit stupid. I began to hear a melody playing. It sounded like a ringtone. I didn't have a cell phone, so it must have been his. When I realized it was a theme song for A Dog of Flanders, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I was still debating whether to let my sleeping dog lie or wake him up, when he opened his eyes of his own accord, maybe hearing the ringtone himself. He sprang up tight, his eyes aligning from time to time on my face as I swam around the room, searching it as he struggled to remember where he was and what he was doing, all the while bedeviled by his elusive chiming phone. Finally, it ceased playing its little song, as if giving up. Um, good morning. Are you really planning to skip work? What day of the week is it again? The Dog of Flanders theme began playing again. Dressed only in his boxers, he gave a start and leaped from bed to fish his phone from the pocket of his suit jacket, where it hung from the back of the chair. He turned towards the wall and began apologizing earnestly to whoever was on the other end. I watched the bones of his skinny back as they twitched beneath the skin. They're pretty bad. I gotta go to work, said little Ken. Hang dog after he hung up, like an elementary school kid who had just been scolded by his mother. It's my fault. I'm sorry. No, don't apologize, Izumi. He clumsily putting on his shirt and pants, then tied his tie. As soon as his suit was on, he was just another boring guy again. He looks so much better naked, I thought as I pulled on a t-shirt to walk over to the refrigerator to get a bottle of water. I I poured a glass and offered it to him. Thanks. Were you always so nice, Izumi? Faced with such a question, I couldn't help but laugh again. Perhaps sleeping had rekindled my sense of resignation, but my pride no longer felt a weight of wounding at his words. Will I see you again? Sure. Hey, do you know how to fix a TV or an air conditioner? It depends on the model. Why? Are yours broken? Little Ken flickered the television set on and off, peering at its distorted picture, and then took the batteries in and out of the air conditioner remote, his brow furrowed in thought. He scribbled the series serial number onto his notepad, and then he ripped a new page out, wrote his cell number on it, and handed it out to me. You can call me at work, but I'm out a lot, so here's his number, okay? I took the paper from his hand and nodded. Little Ken smiled happily, kissing me lightly on the lips, and bounced out on the door. The moment he was gone, everything that had happened since last night seemed to lose its reality completely, popping like a soap bubble. Though when I crawled back to bed, his doggy son was still there, and folded within it, I indulged myself in a lovely, indolent sleep. As it was getting towards evening, the phone rang, and still blurry with sleep, I answered it, thinking it would be little Ken. It wasn't. It was a guy I had known when I'd worked with my husband, and he was asking if I wanted to grab a bite to eat that night. I didn't have anything to do and had no reason to refuse, so I decided to go. Look who's hot stuff all of a sudden, I thought to myself, tilting my head as I put my makeup on. I picked out the summer weight suit from the ones I'd keep shut away during I'd moved here, but when I put it on, it somehow no longer looked right on me. Maybe it's because my hair has grown out long. I haven't been to a salon in forever. It wasn't like anything important was on the line, I figured, so I exchanged the suit for my usual cargo pants. The place he picked fashion was a fusion restaurant up in the Ioma North, and get there I'd have to pass by one of our old stores. Surely that was on purpose. Yet, when I turned east into Aoyama, admittedly with a bit of a flutter in my breast, I saw that where the store had been, there was now one of those American coffee places that were popping all over. I'd known it had closed, but still, it hurt to see it. The down payment needed to secure a place along the strip had been enough to make your eyes pop out if you were going to do it as an individual. But for an expanding enterprise, I thought it was no big deal. My husband and I had fought over whether to open a third store here. I'd been sure it would be an absolute success, but the sheer amount of the initial investment had scared him. I arrived 15 minutes late, but I'd expected he had yet to arrive. I ordered a beer anyway, and as I was drinking it, he appeared, saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," with an expression on his face that wasn't sorry at all. This guy, Hyodo, sold Asian style goods wholesale on behalf of a handicrafts chain that was backed by a major apparel company. I was pretty sure we were around the same age, but sometime when I wasn't looking, he'd fill out quite a bit, gaining a certain presence. "Hey, you've gotten skinny while I wasn't looking," he said, voicing an opposite impression of me. He motor mouthed through ordering the drinks and food from the waiter. Did I speak that fast back then too? I wondered. "So, Izumi, what are you up to these days?" He cut to the chase, no pleasantries, no small talk. Nothing in particular. Sorry, I should have said that. I heard you were banging around, and the truth is, I asked you here if you could see you could do the same for me. Kyoto produced a business card from my pocket, his expensive looking suit jacket, recently remade, no doubt, to accommodate his newly filled out frame. Unlike little Ken's, it was pure white, its edges crisp enough to slice your finger. His company had been limited when we had known each other, but sometime between then and now it had evidently gone public. His new title, Managing Director, ran proudly to the edge of the card. When I heard you were free, my thought was, great. You see, uh, we're opening up a direction. We want you to expand into traditional Japanese handicrafts and housewares. I want you to help us do that. He spoke as if the possibility I might refuse had never occurred to him. The location he was talking about was scheduled to open next year at a major private railway terminus, and he wanted to hire me as a merchandiser. A merchandiser is like a buyer, but with an expanded purview. I'd helped shape the company's concept directly, including the image the merchandise projected and how it was displayed. I'd control the timing of each item's introduction and the amount we'd order, and even have a hand in training the staff in how to work the floor. At the company where I'd first worked, I'd handled European goods, while at my husband's store, I'd specialized in Japanese. In either area, I had the experience and knowledge to do the job right. I haven't worked for 2 full years though. I'm confident that you, of all people, can make up for the lost time, and you don't have any obligations to your husband anymore, right? So it's payback time. Payback time, Izumi. Payback time. The words brought me up short. I had no thirst for revenge anywhere in me, but I was reminded from the outside it looked like something terrible had indeed been done to me. Now that I thought about it, I remembered that it had been at a trade show put on by Kyoto that I'd first met my husband. I'd gone mostly just to go and have a look around, but I was struck by the figure of a man dressed in a kimono, despite looking so young. I watched as he studied the catalogs and the sample goods with utmost seriousness, and then took the first opportunity to strike up a conversation. He told me he wanted to convert the house he'd inherited from his grandmother, who passed away the previous year, into a store selling traditional Japanese crafts. Hearing that the house dated back to the Taisho era, I suggested that he not renovate it at all, but instead just hang a traditional indigo no ren over the a door and use it as is. His eyes shone at my suggestion. This encounter sparkled the whirlwind romance that resulted in our marriage. After which, we talked more and more concretely about opening the business together. I didn't have any particular attachment to the company where I'd worked from the previous 6 years. The prospect of marrying a nice guy and building a business together from the ground up appealed to me so much more than playing the never ending game of musical chairs that competing for titles at a company increasingly felt like. Remember those handmade little animals in the traditional Japanese candles? Those were great. Your ex husband doesn't sell those anymore, I don't think, and I'd love for you to handle them at our place. Back when I'd commissioned a young artist to make stuffed animals for us and develop a line of Japanese style candles to go with them, my husband hadn't been pleased. He thought they looked cheap, but I insisted, and when they debuted at the store, they ended up selling much better than either of us had imagined. Even getting up and featured in the women's magazine, attracting customers from far, far wide to our location, and some major department stores contacted us to see if they could sell them too. Thinking back on it, I wondered if it had been yet another thing I'd done to win my husband's pride. Wait, hold up a moment. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hyodo reluctantly put his mug of beer back down at my words. Why not? I'm giving you a chance to get back at it, Izumi. You know, if you stay out of the game for much longer, everyone will forget about you completely. The truth is, though, I never particularly cared much about the handicrafts or housewares to begin with. The truth spilled from my lips before I quite knew what I was saying. Hyodo leaned over the table towards me in response. But that's the point. Look, there's enough girls running around who love the cute little things to hire and fire one every day. Loving the merchandise is more of a liability than an asset. Faced with this unexpected response, I levelly returned his gaze. You must know what I mean, Izumi. A quality item and an item that sells are two different things. I mean, I'd love to handle only high quality items made by master craftsmen, but your average customer has no eye for that kind of thing. The things that sell are cute at first glance and cheap enough to use for a season and then throw away once you get tired of them. I'm not saying you should sell anything that sells just because the thing, if you don't sell anything like that, when the time comes, you don't encounter something of true value, you won't have the capital to take advantage of it. He told me this as if enlightening a bright child. I said much the same thing to my husband, I recalled. The things Hyodo was saying were absolutely true, and I knew I couldn't make a living sewing silly Picasso knockoffs all day, but still, his words left me unmoved. My indifference must have been obvious, and he eventually grew silent. Not bothering to hide his disappointment, he put a cigarette to his mouth and lit it. It was that much of a shock then, huh? With your husband? What? The group at the table next to us grew suddenly rowdy, drowning out his words. I thought you were wanting to get back at your feet, but it looks like I just brought up bad memories. I apologize. Oh no, that's not true. I just wanted to tell him, but the words refused to come out. When do I have to tell you by? I asked finally, staring down at the food I'd barely touched. Well, let's see. We don't really have to move on this for a bit, so let's say 1st of September. Think of it as homework for your summer vacation. I should have been used to it by now, but still, when I saw Hyodo produce a 10,000 yen note from his wallet and hand it to the server, it bummed me out. It also made me remember back when I'd been flush too and never split bill with Asuka or my other friends, taking it upon myself to pick up the tab every time without asking. It had never occurred to me then what it might feel like to be paid for by others. I'd fallen out of habits, so the drinks from the dinner started to make my head hurt. I hailed a taxi outside the restaurant and took it straight home. There, I found a parcel waiting for me in front of my door. Wondering what it might be, I looked to see who had sent it. Reading Asuka's name, I got a bad feeling. And when I opened it, I found not only the Pikachu I had given her, but 7 teddy bears dressed in outfits I'd made. I know I should keep these to spare your feelings, Izumi, but honestly, I just can't bring myself to. I'm sorry. I don't really know how to put this. All I can say is that taking a breather and running away are two different things. It's getting hard to watch. I'm truly sorry. I read Asuka's frank words out loud to myself. She could have just thrown them away without telling me, I thought, rubbing my temples. Friendship is a kind thing, but also cruel. As I looked at the stuffed animals arrayed before me like this again, they indeed struck me as pretty nauseating. My mother used to tat doilies that I used to as coasters or put under vases, and I remember them striking me the same way. Nobody really wanted them, not even her. But still, she went on making them. I should have pitied her, but instead I ended up becoming her. I shed my clothes without washing off my makeup and crawled into bed. I could still faintly smell the scent of my doggy friend, but I had no wish to call him. When I opened my eyes again, it was 8 in the morning, a shockingly respectable hour. Not only that, but the sky was clear and sunny again after I don't know how many days. So I threw open all the windows and hung my futon and sleeping bag out in the veranda as I loaded up the washing machine. In the sunlight, my apartment's dirtiness stood out in the stark relief, so I decided to do a little cleaning. I started filling a plastic garbage bag with all the stuff covering my floor. I popped the stuffed animals in it too, one after another. But when I went to it up close, my eyes met perfectly round eyes of Pikachu. It didn't seem wasteful to throw them out.
Maybe I should at least take a picture before I get rid of them, I thought. And then I remembered Asuka suggesting to make a website. I'll go out and get a digital camera so I can take a picture for the site, I thought, excited at the prospect of a new project to waste my time on. Leaving my cleaning half done, I walked up to the electronic district and picked up a cheap digital camera. This emptied my wallet, so I stopped by a cash machine to replenish it. After receiving my customary 100,000 yen, I glanced down at the receipt and accompanied it. The balance in my regular saving accounts was almost zero. I was living unbelievably frugally compared to my former lifestyle, but it shouldn't have come out as a shock that spending money while earning nothing would drain my resources. Nonetheless, I'd never really thought about it like that. I suddenly regretted my recent camera purchase and the taxi fare from the day before. No matter how much I reassure myself with money in the bank, 20 million yen was 20 million yen. A considerable sum if you're saving up while working. But if you're trying to just live on it, after a few years it'll be gone. All the time studying harder than anyone else at school, working harder than anyone else at my job, and this was what I had to show for it. How hard would you have to work to make enough to never to work again? It doesn't look like I had a choice. I had to take Hyodo up on his offer no matter how much I didn't feel like it. I told myself darkly, but I'd still wait until summer was over to tell him. That's as much as I want to think about it, I thought, shaking my head. The first thing I did notice I got back into my apartment was my boot up computer. It was just a run of a mill desktop I'd gotten before the divorce, and I'd never used it for anything but email and casual web surfing. But now that I look a bit closer, I saw it was loaded with a rudimentary website builder. Not bothering to read the manual, I began to construct an index for my site. From then on, aside from a few trips to the convenience store to get something to eat, I never left my apartment, absorbed as I was, my new time killer, until one night, after losing track of time almost completely, I heard a knock at my door. A delivery man or a newspaper carrier would ring the doorbell, so at first I thought it was just imagining it. Still, I stopped my fingers from the tapping and listened, only to find that, indeed, it really did seem to have sound of someone knocking. Looking through the peephole, I saw little Kin standing there stiffly in his suit. What's going on? You know, if you don't ring the bell, it's easy to miss you out there, I said, opening the door, to which he stilted, responding, Good evening. All right, come on in. Thank you very much. His demeanor was hesitant, ultra polite, a complete 180 from what he'd acted last time I saw him. I bought these, he said, offering me the plastic convenience store sack he was carrying. I held 2 chilled cans of beer and 2 containers of shaved ice. I didn't know which one you'd like, so I got both. You could have called and asked. How could I? You never gave me your number. No, that's right. I never did. Can you understand how I've been feeling, Izumi, waiting all this time for you to call? Little Ken, who had been standing awkwardly all this time, finally sat down in the chair in front of my computer. I sank down into my bed, remembering the headache drinking beer a few nights before had given me. I chose ice. You could have just come over. How could I have known that? Imagine it from my side. When you didn't call me, I figure you must have wanted it to be a one-time thing, Izuma. How could I just come over if there was distinct possibility I'd be turned away at that door? Little Ken was absolutely right, of course, but if I told him the truth, if then I hadn't called him because it had simply slipped my mind, it would likely hurt him even more. I'm sorry. It's just that I've been busy lately. If I'm bothering you, I'll go. If you were a bother, wouldn't I have turned you away at the door? This finally got a smile out of little Ken. He popped open his beer and drank it with gusto, draining it almost in one gulp. Little Ken opened the second one and brought it up to his mouth. I watched him, picking at my eyes with a little spoon, and wondered if he didn't seem to be a bit of an incipient alcoholic. Finishing the second beer in no time, he rose to his feet, saying, "Well then," and reached out to the large bag he'd bought and producing a small cardboard box. What on earth? I thought. And then he opened it, revealing an air conditioner remote. He took some batteries out of the bag as well and loaded it to a device, and then he walked over to the air conditioner proper and flipped open and on, and the exhaust fan on the veranda shuddered noisily to life. A mold-scented breeze caressed my cheek. "Oh, you fixed it!" I exclaimed, surprised, to which little Ken shrugged, exultant. The battery case in the remote was rusty, so it didn't work. That's all. Needed to take the batteries out in the store when the season changes again and maybe clean your air filters. This is amazing. A cool breeze flew steadily throughout the space. I ran around the apartment, shutting all the windows I'd opened. When I returned, little Ken had moved on to the television set using a screwdriver to open its back. "You're fixing my TV too?" "It's one of ours. It'll be easy. But it might take a second, so you'll have to be patient." "Thank you so much. Oh, and can you replace the light bulb in my kitchen?" "I can't reach it even when I stand on a chair. So, of course. Can I do anything to help?" Sitting cross legged in front of the television and fiddling with the part, little Ken grew thoughtful as he considered my question. "I could stand a little more beer, I guess. I'll go get it." I grabbed my wallet and went out the door. I broke into the little trot on the short way to the store. "What are you so excited about, you idiot?" I thought, but nonetheless, I felt a smile across my face. When I returned bearing 4 beers and few snacks to go with, little Ken was just returning the television to its previous position. The perfect clean image of a sportscast filled the screen. "Look at that, it's working," I said in a loud voice, making little Ken smile and blush. "You don't need to be so grateful. It was nothing. The color was off balance, that's all. That and it was pretty dusty, so I cleaned that up too. Dust can damage the set, you know. Can you tell me where the new bulbs are so I can change the light?" Of course," I said, getting the bulbs I'd bought almost half a year ago from where I'd stowed them in the closet. There was probably no more than 5 centimeters difference between my height and little Ken's, but it was enough to prevent me from reaching the socket on the ceiling no matter how I tried. The kitchen filled with light. The empty instant ramen containers and dirty dishes filled the sink glowed in the brightness, and embarrassed, I took little Ken's hand in mine and led him to the bed, where I sat him down and kissed him on the cheek. He smiled happily and pulled the tab on another beer. "Thank you so much, really, you saved the day." "You're very welcome." I'd always had the impression he was useless, but maybe he'd be pretty handy to have around. "I'd pay you back, don't worry. New remotes don't grow on trees, I know." "Don't worry about it. This guy I know at the electronics store gave it to me real cheap. Anyway, you said you were busy lately. What have you been doing? Did you get a job?" "No, I've just been making a site." "On the internet?" "Yeah. You want to see?" I led little Ken back over to the chair in front of the computer and showed him the site I'd been working on for the past week. "Wow, it looks great. What's that, a Pikachu?" "Yeah, I sewed him myself. I might get in trouble, actually, if I get caught selling it." "Why not keep it?" Sitting here talking like this, it felt like we were a real couple, little Ken and I. "Anyhow, you did a really great job. It looks great, and look at the number of the visitors on the counter. You could do this as a real job." Being praised so sincerely brought up a complicated feelings. How hard was it to build a simple homepage? I just looked around at a few sites made by professionals, gathered the basic building blocks, and thrown it together. I'd posted links to it here and there and let my post pet friends know about it, and someone even posted a link to it on the forum somewhere without me asking. And that was it. I'd even received a few emails inquiring about how they might get rights to sell my stuffed animals and teddy bear clothing. It was a bit unreal. But I also only really interested me at first, and I didn't have any new content to post or anything happening in my life compelling enough to write a blog about. In truth, I'd already started to tire of the whole thing. I hugged little Ken's head as he sat in front of the computer. We pressed our lips together and giggled playfully. I really am fond of this boy, I thought. But I might be the same as with my handicrafts or my website. I'd get all wrapped up in him for a while and then just as quickly lose interest. My irresponsibility appalled me, and yet I was helpless before the primitive impulses that gripped me. I stripped naked, sent shower, and we went at it yet again. If you forgive me for saying so, I think I like this Izumi better than the one I knew at work. Little Ken said this as we lay tangled in the sheets, naked, bathed in the cool wind that blew from the newly repaired air conditioner. It startled me a little. Really? Everyone else seems to want to get me back on my feet, to be my old self again. No, I mean, when you announced that you were quitting to get married, you looked so happy and you were so pretty. But before that, the things you'd say and the way you'd say them was so nasty and abrasive. You struck me as being just a really unpleasant woman. You told me before that you'd always had a crush on me. Oh, I had a crush. You were a winner, unlike me. Were a winner. The past tense caught my attention, but I decided not to think about it. Instead, I pressed little Ken's head on me like a stuffed animal and petted his hair. Why'd you get divorced? He asked, his voice muffled. I couldn't think of an answer, so he quickly added, If you don't want to tell me, it's okay. I'm sorry. You know something, Obara? You're the kind of guy who really looks better naked. As I invaded his question with a non sequitur, little Ken gave a little laugh. Is that supposed to be a compliment? I know the suits I wear are cheap. I have to buy a lot of them. I walk around the heat all day for work. I can hardly go around naked, can I? I pressed my lips to little Ken's indignantly furrowed forehead, quieting him. After that, little Ken started dropping by on his own way back to work once or twice a week. He'd come by on Sunday sometimes too, dressed in a t-shirt and Bermuda shorts, and he'd fix the wallpaper where it was peeling off from the wall, or go with me to hang out at the manga cafe. It was easy being with him. He didn't tell me how much he liked me, or how he was in love with me, or asked how long I intended to stay unemployed, which freed me to stop thinking about anything at all. Summer in the city meant the asphalt was as hot as a frying pan, and I saw the news that it would climb past 40 degrees Celsius. I got woozy just walking to the convenience store. I was truly fortunate to have a little Ken fix my television and air conditioning before the heat wave. Going out while the sun was up was enough to make me almost pass out. And even after it set, the temperature didn't dip below 30. I was bored of the internet, so I spent all my time starkly, blankly at the TV or sleeping, the air conditioner going full blast 24/7. I had no appetite, but I'd eat a little of the cold Chinese noodles or ice cream little Ken would bring me, and somehow we got by. But by the time August rolled around, I was feverish with summer cold. It was only to be expected after spending every day and every night beneath an air conditioner turned as high as it could go. One night little Ken came by like usual and found me with 39-degree temperature. Freaked out, he found a clinic open late and brought me there. The doctor told me that my immune system was weak due to anemia and borderline malnutrition, news that shocked little Ken more than it did me. After the doctor warned me not to underestimate the problem and make sure I ate properly, little Ken forced me into a taxi and brought me to his place. His apartment turned out to be in a neighborhood about 30 minutes from downtown by train, and despite his apartment being on the top floor of the rundown two-story wooden building, the area was tree-filled and green, and a lovely breeze blew through the windows when open. He tucked me into his bed and hit the air conditioner remote. It's a good thing I had some summer vacation days saved up, I recall he had said, and he ended up taking 3 days off, remaining faithfully by my side until my fever broke.
He was no chef, but he cooked 3 meals a day for me and fanned my forehead when I'd get hot. His place was as shabby as mine, but the tatami floor felt nice against my bare feet. All this kindness made me grateful, but also suspicious. I couldn't figure out why he would be so nice to me. Sure, he said he was a loser in terms of his career, but he was handsome enough and amiable. Judging from what he told me, his supervisor seemed fond of him and his underlinings adored him. It seemed impossible why he would have no luck with women. So, what did he see in the likes of me that would make him so kind? My fever broke. Finally, I took a bath again instead of just a shower. Tub was cold, but he kept it immaculate, as was his way, and it felt good as I sat in it. There was a scale just inside the bathroom door, and when I weighed myself, I was surprised to see that I weighed 39 kilos. That can't be good, I thought. I'm 5'2". I told myself the scale must have broken. That Sunday, I told little Ken I was feeling better and should be getting back to my own apartment. A forlorn look clouded his features momentarily, and then he offered to accompany me back to Shinjuku. I feel bad imposing on you already. You can just see me to the station, I replied. I was filling to bursting with remorse for having caused him all this summer vacation time. It was 10 o'clock and midsummer sun beat up down as hard as ever. But partway through our trip to the station, little Ken suggested we stop by a park, and he knew that was jungle thick with trees, their shade offering cool comfort as we sat on the bench beneath them. I don't think that apartment in Shinjuku is very good for you. Little Ken told me this as I drank from a can of iced tea he had gotten from a vending machine. Good for me or not, I bought it. I can't very well move now. It feels cursed, that place. Don't be creepy, I replied, meaning to make him laugh, but his profile remained serious. I couldn't think of a way to say it, but he spoke without looking at me, then trailed off into silence. I braced myself, trying to think of what to do if he asked me to move in with him. When he first started staying at my place, Izumi, I couldn't stop worrying. I ended up going to visit Big Ken, back where we used to work. You what? He's a big boss now, a real big deal. It's hard to believe we're the same age. It took me a second to put it together that he was talking about Kenichi Obara, who'd been hired at the same time he had, and as soon as I did, I had a sinking feeling I knew he was going to say. It's not cool, I know, but I ended up asking him about you. He told me everything, every little detail. It's been pretty tough for you, hasn't it? It was a small world. The business I used to be in. I was sure rumors about my separation from my husband had started to circulate right after it happened. A certain amount of interpretation occurs as rumors get passed around, and the story had surely become festooned with unflattering embellishments before long. After all, there was no linear, easy to trace progression that led my husband asking me for a divorce. It all came down to my insistence on dominating every little thing having to do with the business. After the stunning success of the little animals and the pop art-inspired Japanese candles I'd commissioned, we began stocking cheaper mass-produced goods as well. And business started growing by leaps and bounds. Building on this, I pressed my husband to open 2 new locations, one in Sendagi and the other in Ioma North, and he ended up acquiescing, though in truth, by the time he did, it had been a nearly foregone conclusion anyway. My husband had been born and raised in Asakusa, so his heart lay in true handcrafted traditional goods. He soon started getting flack from old friends and family. I can't believe you're selling crap like that. What happened to your eye for quality? I knew more or less what was going on, but I chose to pretend I didn't. I wanted to have children, and I knew I couldn't do it while working morning to night like I was. To prepare, I wanted to sell as much as possible, as quickly as possible. I did everything in my power to raise our yearly profits by every measly yen I could. And indeed, the profits rose steadily, but the things between my husband and me grew more and more strained. And the prospect of going back to each other night at the apartment of my husband had brought with his parents' money started to depress me. I knew I shouldn't have, but I spent more and more nights camped out at the store. But it was true too, and I began to think of him as a spoilt little rich kid, as a man who didn't understand business, as not really much of a man at all. Before long, he began seeing someone else. How fortunate of me that he ended up being the one to have an affair. His mother taught traditional Japanese dance. Though she didn't advertise, she attracted a steady flow of young women to her classes through the word of mouth. It was one of these students who ended up falling in love with my husband. She'd come to the store countless times, and despite her ultra short, modern haircut, she looked great in the kimono. The effect was, in fact, not unlike the one that had attracted me to my husband when I'd first laid eyes on him at the trade show. So by the time he told me that he wanted to live with her, that he knew he could build a life with her that was rich and rewarding, unlike the profit obsessed one he was living with me, he'd already made up his mind completely. He prostrated himself formally before me, promising that he'd do anything I wanted so as long as I would agree to remove myself from the family registry. Even as I screamed and cried, vowing that I'd never give him the satisfaction, I knew my heart as soon as he had said the words that it was over. I can't take the loneliness anymore, he had said, and truly, the life we'd ended up leading had been lonely. Pushing harder and harder to get ahead, to climb higher and higher, I devised a way of life for us that had no room for distraction or even emotion. Once he stopped believing in it, what else did I have to offer? Maybe I'm worrying too much, but you've changed so drastically. Are you sure you don't want to rent a little room near here with me? I'd feel a lot better if you did. I didn't know how much Big Ken knew or what he'd told little Ken, but it was obvious that whatever he'd heard made him feel extremely sorry for me. Despite having recently gone back to its previous numbness, my pride smarted. My stupid, useless pride. Both little Ken and I grew silent. A buzz of cicadas, the smell of the earth, the light filtered through the leaves, moving across little Ken's feet and their flip-flops. I was so confused I had no idea what to say. You know, a guy new asked me recently to join the staff of a new store his company was opening up, I said, finally the words coming out before I quite knew what they would be. Really? Is that so? That's great. He answered so happily, as if about his own good fortune. But I still don't know. Part of me wants to do it, part of me doesn't. Well, with everything that's happened to you, it's natural to have mixed feelings. You know what? That's not it, I said more sharply than I'd meant to. Little Ken's eyes widened. I knew that sooner or later I'd finally get back to my feet, rejoin society, and go back to work. I'd have my doubts, but even so, I'd start to strive again, push harder and harder, climb higher and higher. And yet, for some reason, it made me sad to contemplate it. It was a human condition to stumble and fall, to get hurt, and then to heal and get up again to fight another day. And I hated it. At some point, I'd begun to despise the very capacity of my heart and body to heal itself and move on. I mean, if I get busy again, I won't have all this free time to hang around with you like I've been doing. Crap, I thought, as soon as I said it. So, you've been only with me to pass the time? He said, staring at the ground. That's not what I meant. It's all right, I get it. Once you get back on your feet and start working like before, what would a guy like me have to offer you? No, I said, but little Ken got up and threw his empty iced tea bottle away in the garbage next to the bench. I found I lacked the voice to call after him as he fled down the path we'd been walking together hand in hand just before. I'd never spent as much time waiting for someone to call as I did then, but little Ken never got back in touch. not even 3 days, or 7 or 10. The night I made up my mind to bite the bullet and call him myself. I couldn't find the slip of paper he'd written his number on, so no matter how hard I scoured my apartment, I finally gave up. It was just like he said, I suppose. If it weren't there, there'd be no way I'd have lost his number so easily. The next day, the phone rang. I scrambled to answer it, but it turned out to be Asuka. She kept apologizing, seeming really sorry for some reason. I was at a loss, unable to figure out what might have prompted this until I finally remembered the stuffed animals she'd sent back to me. I sent you so many emails and you never replied, so I figured I must have really upset you. It's totally fine, I explained. I even ended up making a website to showcase them. Hearing this seemed to finally calm her down. We'd had, I know, many fights since we were kids, but none were ever as bad enough that we couldn't make up afterwards. I can't believe I'm saying this after doing something so mean to you, but I have a favor to ask, she said, hedging before she got to the point. Do you mind helping my kids with their summer housework? According to Asuka, her husband usually helped the kids complete their projects for the art class during the last 2 days of August, but this year he'd been called away suddenly on business until September. You always got the worst grades in arts and crafts, didn't you, Asuka? Exactly. He's so good with his hands, but I'm utterly useless. I have to work all day too, so I just don't know what to do. I hadn't seen Asuka's kids in over 5 years. Kids exactly weren't my strong suit, and I kind of felt that children should do their homework themselves without help, but on the other hand, it wouldn't be a lot of pleasure with her husband not there. And besides, this seemed to be Asuka's way of extending the olive branch, so I agreed to do it. It's got to beat languishing in this awful apartment all day, at least, I thought. The children, it seemed, wanted me to teach them how to make animals their mother had mysteriously taken from them, but it seemed impossible to teach a couple of kids in elementary school something so complicated in only 2 days. Besides, I figured the teacher would respond better to something a bit more childish, so I looked up how to make paper mache on the internet and headed off to Asuka's place. Asuka's apartment was located in one of those long row of high rises about an hour by express train from the city. It was about the same size as a place I'd shared with my husband, but it housed a family of four, not two. Her oldest was already in sixth grade and quite an adult, greeting me formally as I walked through the door. The younger, a third grader named Rinko, was bashful and quiet, squirming nervously behind Asuka's skirt. As Asuka and I had some tea, her oldest showed no compunction coming up and talking to us, asking if he could play video games or if we could help him with his math homework. The younger, on the other hand, sat silently on the fat corner of the room, sneaking peeks at us every once in a while. Kids, whether they are in your face or leaving you alone, are such a nuisance. But it was only 2 days after all. Asuka seemed so grateful. You can buy paper mache pre-made at the store, but I figured the process was part of the fun, so I decided to show them how to make it from scratch using old newspapers. As I was starting to cut the paper into long strips, the younger one stirred me up and said in a small voice, "Can I try it too? It's your homework. It wouldn't be right if you didn't help out." I handled her newspapers and scissors as I said this, and she started cutting up right away. Then we put it in water to soak, boiling it in a big pot. That was as far as we got that day. I ate the dinner Asuka made us along with the kids. I ran a bath before going to the bed and saw on the changing room scale that I'd gotten my weight up to 41 kilos. The next morning, after Asuka left for work, we added flour and water to the newspaper that had transformed overnight into mush. This seemed to interest the boy more than the girl. "I'll do it," he informed me before stirring the mixture. Once it was really ready, I decided to make a sample to show them how it worked and went about covering a bowl in plastic wrap and then carefully spreading paper mache across the surface. Later, when I removed the bowl, it kept the shape and the kids responded with exaggerated glee. The boy dove right in it, making boy things like monsters and cars and fake poop, but his sister seemed to be at loss to what to do. I got out some other dishes so she could try using them as molds, like I had, but she wasn't very good at it, and they turned out pretty bad. Despite their clumsiness, though, I found their shapes somehow enduring, and I set them aside without trying to fix them. Before long, the boy had left to go play with a friend, leaving the girl and me alone to decorate the objects with acrylic paint. Little Rinko's color sense turned out to be excellent. She painted patterns on the bowls she'd made, and they turned out really nice. She seemed like an old hand at holding a brush. I told her how good I thought she was doing, and she smiled bashfully in response. You're the one who made Pikachu for us, right? We were sitting in the living room painting our creation atop newspapers laid down to protect the carpet when she whispered this question to me. As I'd sat alone with the child, the room had grown hushed and still. I liked him very much, but Mom took him away. She said she only borrowed him and we had to give him back. If I want, I can give him to you, I said, and she looked thoughtfully in response. Was he hard to make? Pretty hard. Have you used a thread and needle before? No. Well, next time I'll show you. Really? Her eyes shone at the thought. You really think I could do it? Of course, of course. We finished painting all her pieces. When her brother got home, we grabbed him and made him paint his pieces too. His monsters, his cars, his fake poop. His color sense was pretty bad, and as it turned out, but it was just an elementary school vacation project. The nature of the beast, I suppose. The girl seemed to have completely overcome her initial wariness and insisted that she accompany me in the bath, and we both slept together in the same bed. Don't be a pest, Rinko, admonished Asuka, but I was delighted. It wasn't like I felt I'd acquired a child of my own, however, it was more like I'd become another one of Asuka's. So I found myself snuggled beneath a light blanket with little Rinko in the bed unbelievingly responsible hour of 9 o'clock. Turning off the bedside light, Rinko buried her face in the pillow and said, I gotta go back to school tomorrow. You don't want to go? I do, I do. I made all that stuff I want to show everybody. I thought for a moment and then asked as I stared up at the bedroom ceiling, why do you go to the school at all? What elementary school kid's going to have an answer for that? I wondered. But little Rinko did. It's fun. I get to see my friends. I couldn't think of any response to that as I pondered. She dropped off to sleep. She had both her arms wrapped around me, as well as one of her legs. It was awfully hard to be hugged so close by a child, but somehow it wasn't so bad. Her hair smelled faintly of the watermelon we had eaten after the dinner. I closed my eyes, feeling the heat of the child's body against mine. It recalled spending summer vacations with Asuka. In elementary school, Asuka had been little and weak, and boys had often picked on her and made her cry. I would grab these boys and start fights with them, beat them up for her. But in reality, I was the one who would end up crying much more than she ever did during those summers. What with my parents, who never so much seen me smile, I wasn't showed them a report card. And Asuka had always been there to hold my hand, to comfort me. Today was the last day of my summer vacation too. I still hadn't decided on how much I'd answer Kyoto. At my age, could it be really a simple matter of fun, getting to see my friends? I wanted to talk it over with little Ken, but he surely hated me now. I wanted to stop by at his place unannounced, but I was afraid I'd be turned away at the door. Just like he'd been afraid once, I remembered. I held my friend's child tight against me and began to cry. My initial tears began more and more until my weeping turned into wrenching sobs. I could sense that the child had woken up, startled by my outburst. Mama, Mama, she's crying. The child called out at a voice that was etched into a tearfulness matching mine. I listened to the sounds of her steps as she fled for her mother for rescue.